When I was in ninth grade, I joined the school's track team. It was supposed to be fun, just running around after school and making some new friends. Our coach, Mr. Walters, was a tall man with a quiet voice. He didn't talk much, but when he did, everyone listened. He had this look like he knew everything, but he never smiled. At first, everything seemed normal. Practices were tough but fair. He pushed us hard but didn't yell. One day, though, I noticed something strange about him. It was after practice, late afternoon. I was changing in the locker room, and I heard the door creak open. Usually, the coach waited outside or went straight to his office, but that day Mr. Walters walked in. I froze. He didn't say anything, just stared at me. It felt wrong, like he was watching me in a way no coach should. "Locker rooms are private," I said, trying to sound brave. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I know," he said softly. "I just wanted to check something." I grabbed my bag and rushed out. When I told my friends, they said I was imagining things, but I knew what I felt. After that, I started noticing little things, like how he always found excuses to call me aside, sometimes after practice, sometimes just before a meet. One time, he asked me if I was having trouble at home. I said no, and he didn't push it. But then he said, "You know, sometimes people don't see what's really happening, but I do." I got chills. I tried to avoid him as much as I could, but he seemed to always know where I was. One evening, we had to stay late for extra practice before a big meet. The gym was empty except for the team and Mr. Walters. I was tying my shoes near the bleachers when I heard footsteps behind me. "Hey," he said. I turned around. "Come with me," he said quietly. Something about the way he said it made me uneasy, but I followed. He led me down a dark hallway I'd never seen before. It smelled like old paint and cleaning chemicals. He stopped at a door and opened it. Inside was a small, cluttered office. The lights were dim and papers were stacked everywhere. "Sit," he said. I sat on a worn-out chair. He closed the door and locked it. My heart was pounding. He walked over and sat across from me. "I want to help you," he said. "How?" I asked. He leaned forward and whispered, "I know things about you. Things no one else does." I shook my head. "I don't understand." He pulled out a notebook from under the desk. It was filled with pages of notes and photos. Some were of me, at practice, at school, even once when I was at the grocery store with my mom. I felt sick. "How did you get these?" I asked. He smiled. "I watch. I listen. I learn." I tried to stand up, but the door was locked tight. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said, "but you need to trust me." I didn't know what to say. Suddenly, I heard a noise outside the door. Someone was coming. "Let me go!" I shouted. The footsteps stopped. Mr. Walters stood and unlocked the door. "Be careful," he said. "Not everyone watches out for you like I do." I ran out, not looking back. That night I told my parents and the school principal everything. At first they didn't believe me. Mr. Walters was a respected coach with no complaints before. But when I showed them the notebook, things changed. The police got involved. They searched his house and found even more photos and notes on other students. Mr. Walters was arrested for stalking and invasion of privacy. Even though he was gone, the feeling didn't leave me. I kept looking over my shoulder, afraid someone was watching. Sometimes when I'm at school, I see a shadow in the hallway, or a car parked too long outside. I don't know if it's him or someone else. The worst part is, I'm not sure if it ever really stopped. It started the night I fell asleep during class. I was in 10th grade, and I had been staying up too late studying for exams. Mr. Brenner taught literature. He was one of those teachers who barely smiled and spoke in a low, slow voice. His class was right after lunch, and his room was always warm. It was the perfect storm. That day, I couldn't keep my eyes open. My head fell forward, and I must have dozed off for maybe 10 minutes. When I woke up, the room was dead quiet. Everyone was gone. The lights were off. Only Mr. Brenner stood in the back corner of the room. He was just staring at me. I sat up quickly and grabbed my backpack. "Sorry, I didn't mean to fall asleep," I said, standing. He didn't answer at first, just walked slowly toward the front, then said, "You look peaceful when you sleep." I gave a nervous laugh, not sure if he was joking. I really didn't mean to. I guess I was just tired." He nodded and opened the door. "Be careful, walking home. Some people watch more than they speak." I had no idea what that meant. That night, as I was brushing my teeth, I looked out the bathroom window. For a second, I thought I saw someone standing across the street, just barely lit by the streetlight. But when I blinked, they were gone. I tried to forget about it. The next day at school, Mr. Brenner acted like nothing had happened. He handed out worksheets, explained the next project, and didn't mention the fact I had slept through most of the last class. Still, I couldn't shake how weird it had been. Then, things got stranger. On Wednesday, I got home to find a small white envelope in our mailbox. It didn't have a stamp or my address, just my name, written in neat handwriting. Inside was a photo of me, sleeping, in class. It was taken from the back of the room, slightly to the side, like someone had been sitting a few rows behind me. But that day, I had been in the last row. I asked my parents if they had dropped off a letter for me, but they said no. I didn't tell them about the photo. I don't know why. Maybe I didn't want them to think I was overreacting. On Friday, I told my best friend Sarah about it. She looked worried. "Are you sure it was Mr. Brenner?" she asked. "I didn't see anyone else in the room," I said. "And the photo. It had to be him." That afternoon, I stayed behind after school. I pretended I left my binder in his classroom. When I went in, Mr. Brenner was sitting at his desk. He smiled when he saw me. "You're back," he said. "Forget something?" "Yeah. My binder." He pointed to the corner. I went to grab it. As I was leaving, I stopped and asked, "Mr. Brenner, did you take a photo of me on Monday, when I fell asleep?" He didn't answer at first. Then he said, "Some moments are worth saving." My stomach dropped. I just nodded and left as quickly as I could. That night, I locked my bedroom window. I kept the lights on. I even pushed a chair against my door. I couldn't sleep. Around 3 a.m., I heard a car outside. Not moving, just idling. I peeked out my curtain and saw a dark car parked across the street. I couldn't see the driver. After a few minutes, it slowly drove off. I told my parents about the car the next morning. They said maybe it was someone lost. I wanted to believe them. But then came the second letter. This one had no photo. Just a note. It said, "It's easier to watch when they trust you." That Monday, I went to the school counselor. I showed her the letter. She took it seriously and said she would speak to the principal. They talked to Mr. Brenner that afternoon. When I got called into the office, the principal said Mr. Brenner denied everything. He claimed I was confused, maybe under stress from exams. I asked if they checked his classroom for cameras. The principal said that would require a warrant, and unless I had real proof, they couldn't do much. I felt helpless. The next day, Mr. Brenner wasn't at school. The office said he had taken a personal day. But I saw him. That night, around midnight, I looked out my bedroom window again. He was standing across the street. No car, no bag, just standing, looking up at my window. I didn't move. I didn't even blink. After about 5 minutes, he turned and walked away. I haven't seen him since. Mr. Brenner resigned the next week. The school said he was dealing with family matters. Nobody asked me any more questions. But every so often I find something strange in my mailbox, a note, a blurry photo. Once, just a single line, "You still sleep the same way." It was the middle of the school year when Mrs. Harris, our regular history teacher, suddenly had to take leave. No one said why, just that she wouldn't be back for a while. The school hired a substitute named Mr. Collins to fill in. At first, Mr. Collins seemed fine. He was polite and quiet, with round glasses and a soft voice. But something felt off. The way he looked at the class was strange, like he was searching for something. On his first day, he told us to put our phones away and pay attention. Nothing unusual there. But then he started asking personal questions. "Where do you live?" he asked me one day during group work. "Why do you want to know?" I whispered. He just smiled and said, "It's important to understand your story." The other students said he seemed harmless, maybe just a little awkward. But I felt uncomfortable. One afternoon, after school, I stayed behind to ask him a question about the homework. The classroom was empty except for us. I was about to leave, when I noticed his desk drawer was open. I glanced inside and saw notebooks filled with names and addresses. Some pages had drawings of the school, the parking lot, even the bus stop. My heart skipped. "Mr. Collins, what's this?" I asked. He looked up, eyes calm but cold. "These are notes. I keep track to help students better," he said. I didn't believe him. I quickly shut the drawer and left. That night, I kept thinking about those notebooks. Why would a teacher keep all that personal information? The next day, I told my parents, and they said to tell the principal. At school, I tried to avoid Mr. Collins as much as I could, but he kept finding ways to be near me, waiting by my locker, watching me in the hallways. One day, I got a text on my phone. It was from a number I didn't know. The message said, "You're always where I expect you." I showed it to my mom, and she was scared. She said we should go to the police. The school finally took action. They checked Mr. Collins's desk again, this time with a search. They found a small camera hidden inside a fake book. He was fired the same day. But that wasn't the end. Weeks later, I started noticing things. Footsteps outside my house at night. Strange cars parked near the school. And once, I found a folded note on my doorstep. It said, "I'm closer than you think." I never saw Mr. Collins again, but I still feel like he's watching. Like he never really left. When I was a junior in high school, I took an advanced math class. The teacher, Mr. Keller, was strict but fair. He gave tough tests, but if you worked hard, he helped you. At first, everything seemed normal, but after a while, I noticed he was always around me. Not just in class, but in the hallways, the cafeteria, even at the bus stop. I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe he just remembered I asked a lot of questions. One day I stayed late after school to finish homework in the library. When I got out, the hall was nearly empty. As I walked to the front doors, I saw Mr. Keller standing near the lockers. He smiled and said, "Working hard as always." I nodded, but felt uneasy. Then it started getting worse. He began sending me messages on my phone, not about homework, but about where I was. "Leaving the library now?" one text said. "How was the cafeteria today?" Another. I didn't know how he knew. I hadn't told anyone I was staying late or eating lunch in a different place. One evening, I told my parents about the messages. They told me to block him and tell the school. But when I tried to block his number, the messages kept coming from different numbers. They always knew where I was. I began to feel trapped. I stopped, going to the library. I avoided the cafeteria. I took different routes home. Still, the messages followed me. One night, as I was lying in bed, my phone buzzed. A message read, "Look outside your window." I froze. Slowly, I got up and peeked through the curtains. There he was, standing under the streetlight, looking up at my window. I wanted to scream, but I was too scared. The next day, I went straight to the principal's office. I showed her the messages and told her about Mr. Keller. They called him in and confronted him. He denied everything and said I was making it up. The school said they couldn't punish him without proof. After that, I saw less of him around school. But the messages didn't stop. Sometimes when I'm out with friends or at home alone, my phone lights up with a new number. And every time, the message is the same. I know where you are. I still remember the smell of old chalk and wood polish in room 104. That classroom always felt a little darker than the rest, even during the day. But what happened one Friday evening during my senior year, no one ever believed me. Not even my parents. And that's the worst part. Mr. Langley had this way of making you feel like you were doing something wrong, even when you weren't. He wasn't loud or angry, just intense, always watching. He taught 11th grade history, but most kids remembered him for how he'd quietly call students back after class and whisper something like, "You'll stay after school today, right?" That Friday, I was caught passing a note to my friend Maya. Dumb, I know, but we were joking about the substitute in math. Mr. Langley didn't yell. He just walked up, took the note, and said, "Detention, today, after school, room 104. I didn't argue, I just nodded. Everyone else cleared out by 3:15. The halls got quiet fast. I walked into room 104, and Mr. Langley was already sitting at his desk, hands folded neatly on top of a stack of papers. "Sit," he said, not looking at me. There was no one else in the room. I sat 2 rows from the front and pulled out my phone. He didn't say anything, so I started scrolling. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Nothing. "Put your phone away," he said suddenly, still not looking up. I did. I asked how long detention would last. He looked at the clock and said, "Until you've learned something." I didn't like how he said it, like it meant more than it sounded. The room felt too quiet. Even the ticking clock on the wall seemed louder than it should have been. I glanced at the door, thinking about texting my mom to say I'd be late, but I didn't want to push him again. Then the lights flickered, just for a second. Mr. Langley looked up and smiled. Not at me, but at the door behind me. I turned around, but nothing was there. That's when he stood up. "You ever think about how much history gets erased?" he asked, slowly walking toward the windows and drawing the blinds shut. "One by one." "I guess," I said, trying to sound casual. "People forget things. People pretend they didn't see them. Especially schools. Schools are good at that." I didn't respond. Something in my chest started to tighten. He walked over to the file cabinet and opened the bottom drawer. I heard paper shuffling. When he came back, he had an old folder with a rubber band around it. The name on it was faded, but I could make out the word incident. He dropped it on the desk in front of me. "Read it." I looked at him. "What is it?" "Just read it." I opened the folder. Inside were photocopies of disciplinary reports, handwritten letters, and one blurry photo of a classroom. I flipped through a few pages and saw the name of a student, Eli Daniels, expelled in 1997 for aggressive behavior and serious misconduct. But that wasn't the creepy part. One note said he disappeared 2 weeks later. Never found. "What does this have to do with me?" I asked. Mr. Langley was staring out the window now, even though the blinds were shut. "I taught Eli. He sat right where you're sitting." My mouth went dry. I closed the folder and pushed it away. I don't think I'm supposed to see this, I said. He turned slowly and looked at me. No one ever is. I stood up. Can I go now? He just smiled and said, You've got 2 minutes left. I walked to the door. It was locked. Mr. Langley? He didn't move. I tried again. Still locked. My heart started racing. This isn't funny. He said nothing, just kept staring. Finally, I backed away, grabbed my bag, and returned to my seat. The longest 2 minutes of my life passed in silence. Then he said, You're free to go. I didn't wait. I yanked the door open. This time it wasn't locked, and ran down the hallway without looking back. I didn't stop until I was outside, sucking in cold air like I'd been underwater. The next Monday, I told Maya everything. She looked freaked out but tried to laugh it off. Said Mr. Langley was just weird. I went back to room 104 during lunch to confront him, but it was empty. A different teacher was using it. When I asked about Mr. Langley, she blinked and said, You mean Mr. Langley from history? He retired last year. No, I said. He gave me detention. On Friday. She frowned. He hasn't been here since June. I laughed, but it wasn't real. Are you sure? She nodded. Positive. He left without saying goodbye. Nobody's heard from him since, I told the school office. They pulled up the detention logs. There was no record of me staying after school that day. No folder. Nothing. I even went to the school board. They looked into it and said Mr. Langley was last seen in another state. But I know what I saw. I know I was there. I still have the blurry photo I took from the folder. It shows a classroom, room 104. There's a boy sitting 2 rows from the front. He looks just like me.